In this video, we will conduct cluster analysis of the breakfast cereals data. Then we will also plot the cluster averages for the various attributes. And then finally, we will plot a parallels coordinate chart with the cluster averages to see if we can decipher any meaningful pattern from our data. So as we notice, there are some missing values in this data. So first we will have to get rid of these missing values. This is the data of cereals where we have the various attributes of these breakfast cereals. To delete the records with missing value, first we go to Excel Miner. Then we click on Transform, Missing Data Handling. And I'm going to select these variables which we need to clean in case if they have a missing variable, missing data. And say we'll delete the record and we'll apply to the selected variables and click on OK. So now we see that from this list of cereals, 3 cereals which had missing value have been deleted. And we will now conduct hierarchical cluster analysis on this cleaned data which has no missing values. So to conduct cluster analysis, we will go to Cluster, click on Hierarchical Clustering. We choose the attributes that we want to feature in our cluster analysis. We want the various nutritional information, and we also want the rating on taste. So I do Control Select. We move these over, click on Next. We'll normalize the input. We'll choose Complete Linkage, which is the maximum distance linkage between the clusters. Then we will choose 5 clusters and we click on Finish. And this generates our output. This is the dendrogram. Since we had 5 clusters, if we draw a line here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So the distance is roughly 6.25 between the clusters. Now, one thing to notice here is that as we got our cluster output, we have no way of figuring out what record goes to which cluster. So it's a good practice at this stage to copy and paste our information about the clusters in here. So we go back to our data sheet, and I'm just going to copy this column which has the names that will help us map out the clusters better. And I'm going to just paste it here. So now we know what clusters got assigned, what cereals got assigned in different clusters. And we can even now sort this by cluster. And we sort this, it will sort even the names of these different brands. Looking at the clusters, we see that cluster 1 has 3 cereals, cluster 2 is a singleton, and then we have a bunch of cereals assigned to clusters 3, 4, and 5. And we can capture that by the dendrogram as well, where we see that cluster 2 is a singleton by itself. Now, we next want to figure out the centroid of these clusters. We want to find out the average trait of each of these characteristics for each cluster, and for that we will use the pivot chart function from Excel. So pivot table. So we click on pivot table. Okay, and we want to draw a pivot table. So we drop cluster ID as our row label. Then we pick some all these variables that we want to be included. In our description. And we want to have average instead of sum, so we can either use this drop-down menu or we can just go right-click and we click on value field settings, click on average. We do it for all our features. So we see that cluster 1 on an average has the lowest calorie content. It has the highest protein rating. It has an intermediate fat content, low on sodium, and so forth. So now this is a quick snapshot of looking at how each of these 5 clusters rate based on the average features that we selected. What we can also do is we can make a parallels coordinate plot from these clusters. For that, we need to first standardize or rescale these variables so that they range from 0 to 1, and we'll do that for all of these 5 variables. Now, one quick way to get to rescale them is we can just copy these and we just paste them here. That'll clean them of the formula and paste them as a value. So I'll right click, paste special, then I just copy values. Now this will help us conduct mathematical or operations on them so we can find the min and the max, etc. So I'm just gonna copy these row labels, paste them, and then now we will rescale them. For rescaling, we will look at each of these columns. We will take each value, subtract that from the lowest value of this column, and then we'll divide them by the range, which is max minus min. What this will do is it will rescale the lowest value to be 0 and the highest value to be 1. So what we do is we just write a formula which says equal to, we'll say this value minus, we want the smallest value in this range, and we want the lowest value, so we type in 1, and then we'll put this in parentheses and then divide this by the range, which is max minus min. So I'll use large, and I want the first largest value, so in this range, comma 1, minus again the small in this range, comma 1. And because I want to drag these down and to the side, I need to make sure that we keep only these rows. So I'm gonna just put a $sign to anchor the min and the max for this range. And we anchor rows. We just put enter. So what this has done is this has rescaled, and since 63.3 was the smallest value, create a cell which is consisting of the rescaled value. So we have 0 because we had the lowest value. I can just drag it down, and then I can drag it sideways. So this very quickly gives us a snapshot of various features for each of these clusters, all rescaled to lie between 0 to 1. So what I can do next is I can go back to my Excel, select these variables, and then create a line chart which now shows me the various features of these cereals. So as we can quickly see, for example, series 1 consists of all cereals that have a fairly low calorie count, a very high protein, low fat, then again fairly high sodium, but then very high fiber, then low carbohydrates, etc. In contrast, we can look at series 5, which consists of cereals which have a fairly high calorie content, low proteins, high fat, and fairly low fiber. So this is in a way very different than cereal 1. So if we were to pick cereals with a low calorie, high fiber content, we would want to pick cereals belonging to cluster 1, which once we go to our cluster output, would be these brand variety. So these first three cereals are the ones that we would pick if we wanted to have a cereal which has low calorie and high fiber. In contrast, the sugary cereals would be in these categories. They have high calorie, low fiber, high carbohydrates. So this is a very quick way of using cluster analysis to segment our data in meaningful categorizations, and then also figuring out how to get the average of these clusters, and then can we represent them in a visually meaningful way. If not, then we would redo our analysis. We would probably try with different combination of clusters, maybe drop a few features and see if the resulting clusters make sense or not. So this is an art as well as a science in which the analyst really is responsible to be able to classify data based on the distance metrics that we have chosen into meaningful quantities and aggregates.